The ground vanished beneath Jack Reynolds' boots. Not from an explosion, not from enemy fire. The cliff edge, marked as solid trail on every screen in the platoon, simply wasn't there. Maya Stone heard his shout half a second before gravity claimed them both. They fell together into a ravine the satellites swore didn't exist, tumbling through 40 feet of freezing air in Georgian pine branches. Maya hit bottom first, her tactical pack breaking the fall. Jack landed beside her with a crack that meant bone. Above them, muzzle flashes sparked against the afternoon sky. The enemy knew exactly where they'd fall. She yanked out her GPS unit, blood pounding in her ears. The screen glowed cheerful green. According to the digital map updated that morning, they were standing in the base mess hall, 200 miles west, drinking hot coffee. "We've been hacked," Jack gasped through gritted teeth, his leg bent wrong. "And they're herding us like cattle." The briefing room at Firebase Resolute smelled like stale energy drinks and overheated electronics. Sergeant Maya Valkyrie Stone sat in the back row, her tablet balanced on one knee, watching the intelligence officer tap through a presentation that glowed too bright in the dim room. Captain Wesley Marsh stood beside the projection screen, his uniform still crisp despite 3 months in the Caucasus region. He'd arrived from Fort Meade 2 weeks ago, part of the new Digital Integration Initiative that had every old-timer in the battalion grumbling into their coffee. "Real-time updates, people." Marsh's voice carried the confidence of someone who'd never been shot at. "This isn't your grandfather's army. We've got satellite coverage, drone overwatch, and topographic mapping accurate to within 2 meters. Maya glanced at Master Sergeant Jack Reynolds, sitting 3 rows ahead. The old scout's jaw was tight, his weathered hands folded across a paper map that looked older than she was. At 58, Jack was a relic in a unit increasingly filled with soldiers who'd grown up with smartphones. "The new system integrates real-time intelligence from 5 separate feeds," Marsh continued, advancing the slide. "Ground-penetrating radar, thermal imaging, and updated cartography pushed to your devices every 4 hours. The terrain you see on your screen is the terrain you'll encounter. Guaranteed." Jack's hand rose slowly. "Sir, request permission to speak." Marsh's smile tightened. "Master Sergeant Reynolds, let me guess you want to talk about paper maps." A few scattered chuckles rippled through the room. Maya felt her face flush with second-hand embarrassment. "Sir, I'd like to carry backup charge for the platoon," Jack said evenly. "The digital system is excellent, but if we lose signal—" "We won't lose signal," Marsh cut him off. "That's the whole point of redundant feeds. Multiple satellites, encrypted channels, and mesh network backup through the drones. The system is bulletproof." "With respect, sir, no system is—" "Master Sergeant, the Cold War ended 30 years ago." Marsh's tone had lost its professional edge. "I need soldiers who can operate in a modern battle space, not museum curators. If you can't adapt to current technology, maybe it's time to consider retirement." The room went silent. Maya saw Jack's shoulders stiffen, but he only nodded once and sat down. She wanted to say something, to defend the man who'd taught her how to read terrain and wind patterns when she'd first arrived at the firebase 6 months ago. But she stayed quiet, her fingers tight around her tablet. Marsh advanced to the next slide. "Now, the mission. Intel suggests enemy forces are using the Jinvali Pass to move supplies south. We're conducting a reconnaissance in force, 12 clicks into contested territory. Valkyrie, you're our SIGINT asset. What's the electronic picture looking like?" Maya straightened in her seat. "Sir, we've detected intermittent radio chatter in the region, but it's fragmentary. They're using burst transmissions, probably to avoid our direction-finding equipment. I'd assess medium threat level for electronic warfare capabilities." "Good. So they're not sophisticated enough to challenge our systems." Marsh nodded with satisfaction. "We'll be divided into 3 teams. Alpha takes the northern approach, Bravo sweeps east, and Charlie, that's us, moves through the Central Valley. Converge on Objective Falcon at 1800 hours. Questions? Lieutenant Marcus Webb, Alpha Team's commander, raised his hand. Sir, the Central Valley route shows significant elevation changes on my screen. Is the terrain verified? Updated this morning, Marsh replied. Drone pass at 0600 confirmed all routes passable for foot movement. The system's already done the analysis, Lieutenant. Trust your equipment. Jack's voice was quiet, almost to himself. Terrain changes, Captain. Rock falls. Spring melt. A map from this morning might not be accurate by this afternoon. Something to add, Master Sergeant? Marsh's eyes were cold. No, sir. Good, because we move out in 90 minutes, and I need soldiers focused on the mission, not on obsolete fieldcraft. Marsh clicked off the projector. Dismissed. And Reynolds, leave the museum pieces here. That's an order. The motor pool was organized chaos. Maya checked her gear methodically, the way Jack had taught her. Radio encrypted and tested. Backup batteries charged. GPS unit synced to the latest map update, downloaded at 0830, just like Marsh had ordered. You should have backed him up in there. Maya turned. Jack stood behind her, his ruck already loaded, the forbidden paper map tucked discreetly into his cargo pocket. His face was unreadable in the harsh morning light. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Marsh put you on the spot. It wasn't fair. Wasn't about fair. Jack adjusted the straps on his pack with practiced efficiency. You're SIGINT. You know better than anyone that digital systems can be compromised. Our encryption is military grade. It would take exactly as long as it takes, Jack interrupted. Could be 5 minutes, could be 5 years. Point is, the day you stop carrying a backup plan is the day you get someone killed. He pulled the paper map from his pocket, unfolding it halfway. The creases were worn soft, marked with pencil notations in tight military script. This chart is from 2019, probably outdated in a dozen places, but it shows elevation, water sources, and dead ground that won't change no matter how many satellites pass overhead. Maya glanced around the motor pool. 2 specialists were watching them, their expressions curious. Jack, Marsh said. Marsh is an idiot. Jack's voice didn't rise, but the words had weight. He's a PowerPoint ranger who thinks warfare happens inside a computer. When the shooting starts, you remember what's real. The mud, the wind, the way sound carries in a valley. Not what some screen tells you is there. He refolded the map and tucked it away. I'm not asking you to defy orders, Valkyrie. I'm asking you to think for yourself when the tech fails. Because it will fail. It always does. Master Sergeant, we're mounted up. Lieutenant Webb's shout echoed across the yard. Jack shouldered his rifle and headed toward the waiting vehicles. Maya watched him go, feeling the weight of her tablet in her hands. On the screen, the route to Objective Falcon looked simple. Clean lines, color-coded threat zones, estimated travel time calculated to the minute. It looked perfect. The Humvee bucked over rocks hidden beneath the snow. Maya sat in the back with Corporal Danny Price, the team medic, and Specialist Luis Ochoa, their youngest rifleman. Jack rode up front beside Webb, his eyes scanning the tree line instead of the GPS screen mounted on the dash. System shows we're making good time, Webb said, his voice crackling through Maya's headset. Should reach the first waypoint in 20 minutes. Maya pulled up the map on her tablet. Their blue icon moved steadily along the designated route, a dotted line that wound through the valley between 2 ridge lines. The terrain ahead showed green, classified as low difficulty by the pathfinding algorithm. Valkyrie, what's the electronic picture? Webb asked. Maya checked her signals interface. Clean, sir. No enemy transmissions detected within 3 clicks. Either they're maintaining radio silence, or they're not in the area. Or they're using hardline communications, Jack said quietly. Hardline? Ochoa frowned. Like actual wires? Who does that anymore? People who don't want to be found, Jack replied. Low-tech beats high-tech if high-tech can't see it. The Humvee lurched through a stream crossing, ice water spraying across the windshield. Maya felt her stomach tighten. Something about the terrain felt wrong, but she couldn't articulate why. The trees were too thick, pressing close to the trail. The afternoon shadows fell at odd angles. LT, recommend we slow down, Jack said. This doesn't match the topography I remember from last month's patrol. Webb glanced at his screen. GPS shows this is the primary route. Drone confirmed it this morning. Drones fly at altitude. They don't see what's under the canopy. Master Sergeant, Captain Marsh was clear about following the digital routes. Webb's tone had an edge. We're not navigating by gut feeling. Jack didn't respond. He just kept watching the forest, his rifle resting across his knees. Maya checked her signals interface again. Still nothing. The silence should have been reassuring, but it gnawed at her. In her 6 months at Firebase Resolute, there'd always been some electromagnetic noise. Civilian cell towers, radio chatter, even interference from their own equipment. This absolute quiet felt like a held breath. Charlie team, this is Charlie 6. Webb's voice came through the command channel. We're 15 minutes from Waypoint Alpha. Bravo team, what's your status? Static hissed for 3 seconds before Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice responded. Charlie 6, Bravo is experiencing navigation issues. Our GPS is showing us 300 meters south of where our dead reckoning puts us. Requesting confirmation of grid coordinates. Maya sat forward, her pulse quickening. Sir, ask them to read back their exact position. Webb relayed the request. Rodriguez rattled off a string of numbers. Maya pulled them up on her tablet and felt ice slide down her spine. Lieutenant, those coordinates put Bravo team in the middle of a river, she said slowly. They can't physically be there unless they're swimming. Must be a glitch, Webb muttered. Bravo, reboot your GPS units and resync with command. Charlie 6 out. That's not a glitch, Jack said. That's... The Humvee jerked to a stop. Webb was staring at his dashboard screen, his face pale. The route just changed. What? Maya leaned forward. On the display, their designated path had shifted. What had been a green trail now showed red warning markers. The system was rerouting them toward a narrow gap between 2 cliffs, a passage that hadn't existed in the previous update. When did this come through? Webb demanded. Timestamp says 12:47 hours, Maya checked. 19 minutes ago. Updated priority route, classified as improved pathway based on real-time analysis. We didn't get any notification, Webb said. The system auto-updates in the background. Maya's hands were shaking now. It's designed to optimize routes without requiring manual confirmation. Jack was already out of the vehicle, his boots crunching in the snow. He pulled out his compass, then his paper map, orienting himself by the sun and the ridge lines. Lieutenant, this new route is taking us north-northwest. That's wrong. How do you know? Ochoa asked. Because I walked this valley last month, and there's no gap in those cliffs. What you're seeing on that screen is either a sensor error or what? Webb's voice had gone tight. Jack folded his map slowly. Or someone's lying to us. Maya felt the words settle like stones in her gut. She pulled up her SIGINT interface, running a diagnostic on their communication channels. Everything showed green, encrypted, secure, functioning normally. But if the GPS data itself was compromised... Valkyrie, can you detect if we're being spoofed? Webb asked. Not easily, sir. GPS spoofing requires sophisticated equipment. You have to broadcast a stronger signal than the real satellites, with precise timing to override the legitimate data. That's nation-state level technology. Could the enemy have it? Maya thought about the fragmentary radio chatter she detected over the past week. Burst transmissions, frequency hopping, signals discipline that spoke of training and resources. It's possible. Alpha Team, Bravo Team, this is Charlie 6, Webb transmitted. All units, what's your current position and status? Lieutenant Chen from Alpha Team responded first. Charlie 6, Alpha is proceeding toward waypoint Bravo. GPS shows we're on schedule, but visual landmarks aren't matching our expectations. We're seeing heavy forest where the map shows clear ground. Rodriguez's voice followed, tight with frustration. Charlie 6, Bravo is stationary. Our GPS just rerouted us toward a cliff face. We're not following it, requesting permission to navigate by dead reckoning. Negative, Bravo. Hold position while we sort this out. Webb looked at Jack. Master Sergeant, what's your recommendation? Jack pointed at the ridgeline to their east. We're here, not where the GPS says we are. Objective Falcon is 12 clicks south-southeast, bearing 155 degrees. We need to scrub the digital routes and navigate by terrain association. Captain Marsh will crucify us if we ignore the system. Captain Marsh isn't out here. Jack's voice was flat. You are. And you've got 3 teams scattered across hostile terrain with navigation data that doesn't match reality. What's your call, Lieutenant? Webb stared at the GPS screen, then at the paper map in Jack's hands. Maya saw the moment the decision crystallized in his eyes, the weight of command settling on shoulders that had never carried it in combat before. All teams, this is Charlie 6. Disregard GPS routing until further notice. Navigate by visual landmarks and terrain association. Acknowledge. The acknowledgements came back quickly, relief evident in both voices. Master Sergeant Reynolds will provide updated coordinates based on map and compass navigation, Webb continued. All teams converge on grid 4587-2341. That's the old logging station 4 clicks south of. The explosion cut him off. It wasn't close, maybe 2 clicks east, but the sound rolled through the valley like thunder. Maya grabbed her signals interface. A dozen new contacts lit up her screen, radio transmissions suddenly flooding the frequencies that had been silent moments before. Contact! Contact! Alpha is taking fire! Chen's voice was barely audible through the roar of automatic weapons. We're pinned down in a kill zone. GPS led us straight into an ambush. Webb's face had gone white. Alpha, what's your position? The GPS said, Jesus, we've got wounded. The GPS said this was the safe route. More transmissions flooded in, overlapping, panicked. Maya heard small arms fire crackling through someone's open mic. Bravo team was also in contact. 2 of the 3 teams engaged simultaneously. Jack was already moving, pulling Webb out of the Humvee. Lieutenant, we need to get off this trail now. If Alpha and Bravo got herded into ambushes, we're next. Where do we go? High ground, East Ridge, where we can see the valley and establish radio contact with command. Jack pointed at a slope covered in pine trees. It'll be a hard climb, but we'll be out of any kill zone. Webb nodded, his training taking over. Dismount. Ochoa, grab the saw. Price, bring all medical supplies. We're climbing. Maya slung her pack and checked her equipment. Her tablet showed the Charlie team icons still blinking on the designated route. Alpha and Bravo's icons had stopped moving. On the screen, everything looked clean, organized, under control. The reality was gunfire echoing through the valley and men screaming for medevac. They started climbing. The slope was steeper than it looked. Maya's boots slipped on loose scree hidden beneath the snow. Her pack dragged at her shoulders, 50 pounds of equipment that felt like twice that as the grade increased. Above her, Jack moved with the efficiency of a man who'd spent 30 years in the mountains, his injured generation finding footing where she saw only obstacles. Keep your weight forward, he called back. Use your legs, not your back. Maya gritted her teeth and pushed higher. Behind her, Ochoa was struggling with a squad automatic weapon, the heavy machine gun throwing off his balance. Price, the medic, moved steadily, his aid bag secured tight against his spine. Webb paused halfway up, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Master Sergeant, how much farther? Another 100 meters to the ridgeline. We'll have line of sight to the firebase from there. A burst of static erupted from Maya's radio. Under heavy fire, Bravo is combat ineffective. Need immediate... The transmission cut off. Maya felt her stomach drop. Combat ineffective. That was the polite military term for destroyed. Keep moving, Jack ordered. Nothing we can do for them from here except get ourselves in position to provide accurate intelligence. They crested the ridge 20 minutes later, emerging from the tree line onto a rocky outcrop that overlooked the valley. Maya dropped her pack and pulled out her signals equipment while Jack set up his spotting scope. Valkyrie, try to raise Firebase Resolute, Webb ordered, his hands shaking as he unfolded his own map. Maya switched to the long-range frequency and keyed her mic. Resolute Main, this is Charlie 6, how copy? Clean signal, no interference. The base should have been able to hear her clearly. Resolute Main, this is Charlie 6, requesting immediate fire support and medevac for Alpha and Bravo teams. Multiple casualties. How copy? Nothing. She adjusted the frequency, double-checked her encryption settings, verified her transmission power. Everything was optimal. Firebase Resolute, this is any Charlie element. Emergency traffic. How copy? The silence stretched out like a physical thing. They should be able to hear us, Maya said, fighting to keep her voice steady. We're on high ground, clear line of sight, proper frequency. There's no reason. Check your GPS, Jack said quietly. Maya pulled out her tablet. The screen showed Charlie Team's icon blinking steadily. According to the system, they were exactly where they were supposed to be, on the valley floor, following the designated route toward Objective Falcon. Except they were on a ridge 400 meters higher and 300 meters east of where the GPS claimed. It's not just spoofed, Maya whispered. It's coordinated. Someone's feeding false data to our entire command network. And Firebase Resolute is making decisions based on that data, Webb said, understanding dawning in his eyes. They think we're somewhere we're not. They think Alpha and Bravo are on safe routes when they're actually in kill zones. Jack was scanning the valley through his scope. Got Alpha Team. They're pinned in a depression about 2 clicks northeast. I count 4 wounded. Enemy positions on 3 sides. They're getting chewed up. Can we help them? Ochoa asked. Not from here. We'd have to cross open ground, and there's enemy between us and them. Jack shifted his scope. Bravo Team is worse. They're scattered. I see 3 bodies, no movement. Maya closed her eyes. 12 men in Bravo Team. Rodriguez had 2 kids and a wife in Texas. We need to warn the firebase, Webb said. If the GPS network is compromised, every unit in theater is vulnerable. Maya pulled out her tactical sat phone, the backup system that used different satellites than the GPS network. She powered it on and waited for the connection to establish. The screen flickered once, twice, then displayed a cheerful message. Position acquired. You are currently located at Firebase Resolute. Enjoy your secure connection. She showed the screen to Jack. According to the sat phone, she was sitting in the base cafeteria. They've got access to multiple systems, Jack said. GPS, tactical communications, probably even our drone feeds. This isn't some local militia with handheld jammers. This is integrated, sophisticated electronic warfare. How is that possible? Ochoa demanded. We're the United States Army. We've got the best tech in the world. We've got the most expensive tech in the world, Jack corrected. That's not the same thing. And expensive tech has expensive vulnerabilities. You build a castle in the cloud, someone can knock down the cloud. Maya's mind raced through the implications. If the enemy had penetrated their networks at this level, they would know where every American unit was positioned. They would know patrol routes, fire support coordinates, medevac landing zones. It wasn't just an ambush. It was a systematic dismantling of their operational capability. Master Sergeant, what do we do? Webb's voice had lost its command authority, replaced by something raw and young. Jack lowered his spotting scope and looked at the lieutenant for a long moment. Then he pulled out his paper map and spread it on a flat rock. "We survive," he said simply, "and we get word back to the firebase using systems the enemy can't touch. Old systems, analog systems, the kind Captain Marsh thinks belong in a museum." He traced a line on the map with his finger. "There's a fire support base here, 20 clicks southwest. Artillery unit, 155mm howitzers. They're out of the digital network because their equipment is 40 years old and nobody bothered to upgrade them." "That's 2 days of movement through enemy territory," Webb protested. "That's if we move slow and careful. We can do it in 16 hours if we move fast and accept risk." Jack looked at each of them in turn. "I won't lie to you. It'll be the hardest thing any of you have ever done. We'll be operating without GPS, without drone support, without any of the technology you've trained with. Just map, compass, and your own 2 feet." Maya felt the weight of her tablet in her hands. 6 months ago, she'd arrived at Firebase Resolute, straight from Fort Gordon, her head full of encryption protocols and signals intelligence doctrine. Jack had tried to teach her the old skills: terrain association, celestial navigation, how to read the land instead of a screen. She'd humored him, but privately thought it was all obsolete knowledge, the fieldcraft of a dying generation. Now that obsolete knowledge was the only thing that might keep them alive. "What about Alpha Team?" Ochoa asked. "We're just going to leave them?" "They're 12 kilometers away with enemy between us and them," Jack said. "We don't have the combat power to break through, and they don't have the time to wait for us to try. The best thing we can do for them is get word to the firebase so they can launch a proper rescue operation." Webb stared at the map, his jaw working. Finally, he nodded. "Okay, we follow Master Sergeant Reynolds' navigation. Valkyrie, shut down all digital systems except your signals collection equipment. If we're going dark, we're going all the way dark." Maya powered down her GPS unit and tablet, feeling oddly vulnerable as the screens went black. She kept her signals intelligence receiver active. If the enemy was coordinating by radio, she might be able to give the team early warning. "Ochoa, you're on point with me," Jack said, folding his map. "Price, middle of the formation. Lieutenant, you and Valkyrie bring up the rear. Standard dispersal, noise discipline, and for God's sake, watch where you step. The GPS isn't going to warn you about deadfalls or tripwires." They moved out in single file, leaving the ridge and descending into a narrow draw that Jack assured them led southwest. The sun was already low on the horizon, casting long shadows through the pines. In another hour, it would be dark. Maya glanced at her watch, still worked, thank God, since it was mechanical, and calculated their timeline. 16 hours to the artillery firebase. That meant moving through the night with no GPS, no infrared optics, no thermal imaging. Just 5 soldiers, a paper map, and the skills of a man the Army considered obsolete. She was 10 meters down the draw when her foot found empty air. The slope that had looked solid on every screen in the battalion simply wasn't there. The cliff edge, concealed by overhanging brush, opened beneath her like a mouth. She heard Jack's shout half a second before gravity claimed them both. They fell together into a ravine the satellites swore didn't exist, tumbling through 40 feet of freezing air in Georgian pine branches. Maya hit bottom first, her tactical pack breaking the fall. Jack landed beside her with a crack that meant bone. Above them, on the ridge they just left, muzzle flashes sparked against the afternoon sky. The enemy had been tracking them, waiting for them to follow the false terrain data one more time. Maya yanked out her GPS unit, blood pounding in her ears. The screen glowed cheerful green. According to the digital map, they were standing in the base mess hall, 200 miles west, drinking hot coffee. "We've been hacked," Jack gasped through gritted teeth, his left leg bent at an unnatural angle. And they're herding us like cattle. Above them, the gunfire intensified. She heard Ochoa's saw open up, the heavy machine gun's distinctive roar echoing through the ravine. Then Price's voice, high and panicked. "Man down! Webb's hit!" Maya grabbed her rifle and pressed against the ravine wall, trying to make herself small. The tactical situation was clear and completely hopeless. They were at the bottom of a natural kill zone, with enemy above them and no way to climb out. The GPS had led them to exactly the wrong place at exactly the wrong time. And somewhere in the valley behind them, Alpha Team was dying because they'd trusted the same technology. Jack rolled onto his side, his face gray with pain. "Valkyrie, listen to me." "Jack, you need—" "Listen." He grabbed her arm with surprising strength. "The GPS is lying. The radios are lying. Everything digital is compromised, you understand?" She nodded, unable to speak. "There's a way out of this ravine. Downstream, maybe half a click. The map shows a game trail that climbs the south wall." He pulled the crumpled paper map from his pocket and pressed it into her hands. "You've got to get the others and follow it. Don't trust any screen. Just this. Just the map and your eyes. We're not leaving you." "Yes, you are." Jack's smile was tight with pain. "Because if you don't, everyone dies. Alpha, Bravo, every unit that's still operating on compromised nav data. Someone has to get word out through a channel the enemy can't touch." Above them, the firing suddenly stopped. In the silence that followed, Maya heard boots crunching in snow. The enemy was moving down into the ravine. They had minutes, maybe less. She looked at the paper map in her hands, its creases soft with age and use. Every instinct she'd trained screamed at her to check her GPS, to verify the route, to trust the technology that had never failed her before today. But today the technology had failed everyone. Maya folded the map carefully and tucked it into her breast pocket. Then she keyed her radio. The one Jack said was compromised, but it was all they had. "Charlie Element, rally on me. We're moving downstream. Master Sergeant Reynolds will provide cover." "Negative," Ochoa's voice crackled back. "We don't leave wounded." "That's an order, Specialist. Valkyrie has tactical command." Reynolds stays. "We move. Acknowledge." A long pause, then, "Acknowledged." Jack nodded once, his hand reaching for his rifle. "Go." "And Valkyrie?" "Yeah. Trust your eyes, not the screen. Your eyes." Maya turned and ran downstream, the paper map pressed against her heart, as behind her Jack Reynolds opened fire to buy them the time they needed. The old soldier, with his obsolete knowledge and museum-piece fieldcraft, making his final stand against an enemy that had mastered the digital battlefield. The map wouldn't lie to her. Jack had promised that. She just had to learn to read it before they all died in a ravine that didn't exist. Maya's boots splashed through the ice-rimmed creek, each step sending shocks of cold through her feet. Behind her, Price and Ochoa moved in silence, their rifles up, scanning the ravine walls. Lieutenant Webb limped between them, his left arm pressed against his side where a round had clipped his ribs. The sounds of Jack's gunfight had faded 3 minutes ago. Maya tried not to think about what that silence meant. She pulled out Jack's map, her hands shaking as she unfolded it. The paper was marked with pencil notations in Jack's tight script. Elevation lines, water sources, danger areas marked with small X's. She tried to orient herself, matching the creek's bend to the blue line on the chart. "Valkyrie, where are we?" Webb's voice was tight with pain. "Following the water downstream. Jack said there's a game trail half a click ahead, south wall of the ravine." She looked up at the cliff faces rising on either side. 20 meters of vertical rock, impossible to climb without gear. "We're committed to this route until we find it." "And if the map's wrong?" Ochoa asked. Maya thought about Jack's words. "Trust your eyes, not the screen." But what if her eyes couldn't see what mattered? She'd spent 6 months learning to read electromagnetic spectrum. not terrain. The landscape around her was just rock and water and trees. No labels, no color-coded threat zones, no helpful arrows showing the optimal path. "The map's not wrong," she said, with more confidence than she felt. "Jack walked this terrain. He knew it." They moved on. The ravine narrowed, the walls pressing close. Maya's signal intelligence receiver suddenly chirped. A burst transmission, close range, maybe 300 meters behind them. "Contact rear," she hissed. "They're following us." "How many?" Webb asked. Maya analyzed the signal pattern. "At least 4 radios in a coordinated net. Could be a full squad." "We can't outrun them," Price said. "Not with the LT wounded." Maya looked at the map again, trying to see what Jack would have seen. The game trail was still 400 meters ahead, maybe more. The enemy was closing from behind. They were trapped in a natural corridor with no exits and no high ground. Her mind raced through tactical options, all of them bad. Set an ambush? They'd be outnumbered and outpositioned. Keep running? Webb was slowing them down, and Ochoa was carrying the saw, 30 pounds of machine gun that was useless in a foot race. There, Price pointed ahead, where a massive boulder had fallen into the creek, creating a natural choke point. "We can hold them there for a few minutes, buy some time." It wasn't much of a plan, but it was better than nothing. Maya nodded. "Ochoa, set up the SAW behind that boulder. Price, stay with the LT and get that wound treated. I'll provide overwatch from the south side." They moved into position. Maya climbed onto a rock shelf that gave her a view back up the ravine, her rifle braced against a pine trunk. Through her scope, she could see the creek bending around a stand of trees about 100 meters back. The enemy appeared 2 minutes later. They moved well, spread out, using cover, one man covering while another moved. Professional soldiers, not militia. Maya counted 5 visible, but her signal intercepts suggested more out of sight. She keyed her radio. "I count 5, probably 8 total. They're sweeping methodically." "Do we engage?" Ochoa asked, his voice steady despite the situation. Maya thought about ammunition. They'd left their resupply in the Humvee. Between the 4 of them, they had maybe 12 magazines, 360 rounds total. Against a squad-sized element in their own terrain, that wasn't enough for a sustained firefight. But they also couldn't let the enemy close unmolested. "Wait for my mark," she said. "Ochoa, target the lead element. I'll take the rear. Price, be ready to move the LT as soon as we break contact." The enemy reached the boulder. The lead man paused, his hand raised in a halt signal. He was cautious, professional. Maya saw him scan the high ground, his rifle moving in smooth arcs. He knew they were here. "Now," Maya whispered. Her first shot took the lead man in the chest. He went down hard, his weapon clattering on stone. Ochoa's saw opened up a half-second later, the heavy gun roaring in the confined space of the ravine. Rounds sparked off rock and tore through pine branches as the enemy scattered. Return fire came immediately, disciplined, aimed bursts from multiple positions. Maya ducked as bullets snapped over her head, showering her with bark chips. She counted 3 seconds, then rose and fired twice more. One round missed. The other caught an enemy soldier in the leg. "Displacing!" she called, sliding down from her perch. Ochoa was already moving, the saw cradled in his arms. Price had Webb on his feet, half carrying him downstream. They ran. The game trail appeared exactly where Jack's map said it would be. A narrow gap in the south wall, overgrown with brush, but definitely climbable. Maya went first, hauling herself up the rocky slope, her boots slipping on loose scree. Price came behind her with Webb, then Ochoa bringing up the rear, the saw slung across his back. Halfway up, Maya's signal receiver chirped again. She froze, listening to the burst transmission decode in her earpiece. It was Russian. She recognized the language even though she couldn't understand all the words. But she caught 2, artillery and coordinates. They were calling in indirect fire. Move, move, move! She screamed, scrambling up the trail. They had maybe 3 minutes before the first rounds landed, maybe less if the enemy battery was pre-registered on known routes. The trail topped out on a flat stretch of forest, pine trees thick enough to provide concealment. Maya pulled out her compass, shot an azimuth southwest, and started moving. Behind them, the first artillery rounds hit the ravine with earth-shaking thunder. "They're trying to seal us in," Webb gasped, his face pale. "Bracket the ravine with fire, trap us at the bottom." "They're 40 seconds too late," Maya said, but her hands were shaking as she folded the map. Jack's route had saved them again. His pencil marks, his fieldcraft, his obsolete knowledge, all the things Captain Mars had mocked that morning. They pushed deeper into the forest. Maya checked her watch, 15:47 hours. They'd been separated from the platoon for less than 2 hours, but it felt like days. Behind them, artillery continued to pound the ravine. She wondered if the enemy knew they'd escaped, or if they were just making sure. "Valkyrie, hold up." Price's voice was quiet but urgent. Maya turned. The medic was kneeling beside Webb, his aid bag open. The lieutenant's uniform was dark with blood, more than Maya had realized. The round that had clipped his ribs had done more damage than any of them had admitted. "How bad?" she asked. Price's expression told her everything. "He's got internal bleeding. The round must have fragmented, tore up something inside. I can stabilize him, but he needs a surgeon in the next few hours or—" He didn't finish the sentence. Webb managed a weak smile. "Or I bleed out in the woods. It's fine, Doc, just say it." Maya felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders. She was a signals intelligence sergeant, a technical specialist, not an infantry leader. She'd never been trained for this, never wanted it. But Jack was gone, Webb was dying, and she was the senior person left standing. "We keep moving," she said. "The artillery firebase is still our best option. They'll have medical facilities, and we can get word out about the GPS compromise." "That's 16 hours of movement," Price protested. "He doesn't have 16 hours. "Then we move faster." Maya pulled out the map again, studying Jack's route. There was a logging road marked about 3 clicks southwest. If it still existed, they could make better time. "Ochoa, you're on point. Price, help the LT. I'll navigate." They moved out again, slower now with Webb struggling. Every 100 meters, Maya checked the compass and map, trying to match terrain features to Jack's pencil lines. It was harder than she'd expected. The forest all looked the same, just trees and rocks and snow. No helpful GPS arrow showing which direction to go. No breadcrumb trail marking the path behind them. She was learning, step by painful step, why Jack had insisted on carrying paper. 2 hours later, they found the logging road. It was overgrown and barely visible, but the forest opened up enough to allow faster movement. Maya felt a surge of relief. Jack's map was right, which meant his route to the artillery firebase was probably right too. They were making progress. That's when her signal receiver picked up the transmission. It was weak, fragmentary, encrypted with U.S. military protocols. A voice emerged from the static, American, desperate. "Anyone, this is Alpha 2-1, surrounded, ammunition critical." Lieutenant Chen, Alpha Team's commander. Maya's breath caught. Alpha was still alive, still fighting. She switched to the common frequency and keyed her mic. "Alpha 2-1, this is Charlie Element. Send your traffic." Static hissed for 5 seconds. Then, "Charlie? Charlie, where the hell is everyone? We've been calling for support for 3 hours." "Alpha, what's your status?" "We're pinned in a depression 4 clicks east of the original objective. Enemy on 3 sides, 6 wounded, almost out of ammo. GPS is showing us in the middle of a goddamn lake. Where's the medevac? Where's fire support?" Maya closed her eyes. Alpha Team had no idea that their location data was compromised. As far as Firebase Resolute was concerned, Alpha was exactly where the GPS said they were, safe, secure, on schedule. No one was coming to help because no one knew they needed help. Alpha 2-1. Listen carefully. Your GPS data is compromised. Enemy has spoofed the entire navigation network. Firebase doesn't know your real location. A long pause. Say again? Did you say spoofed? Confirmed. All digital nav data is unreliable. What's your actual grid based on terrain features? Another pause, longer this time. Maya could hear shouting in the background, the crack of rifle fire. When Chen came back, his voice had changed. Harder, older. Charlie, we don't have terrain features. We trusted the GPS. We're in some kind of bowl-shaped area with trees and rocks. Could be anywhere. Can you see any ridgelines? Any peaks you can identify? Visibility is 30 meters in this forest. We're combat ineffective, Charlie. Half my guys are wounded. The other half are almost black on ammo. We need immediate exfil, and we need it now. Maya looked at her map. Without accurate coordinates, Alpha could be anywhere in a 20 square kilometer area. Even if she had working GPS and air support, finding them would take hours of systematic search, and she had neither. Alpha, we're moving toward an artillery fire base southwest of your last known position. When we get there, we'll relay your situation through analog channels that can't be compromised. Hold your position and conserve ammunition. Hold position? Chen's laugh was bitter. Charlie, we're dying here. You're telling me to wait while you hike to some firebase? That's your plan? That's the only plan that works, Maya said quietly. The digital network is compromised. Every radio call, every GPS ping, every data transmission is potentially being monitored or manipulated. The only way to get real help is through channels the enemy can't touch. How long? Maya checked her watch. 12 hours, maybe 14. The silence stretched out. She could almost feel Chen doing the math. Ammunition remaining, casualty rate, enemy pressure. All the variables adding up to an answer neither of them wanted to acknowledge. We'll be dead in 12 hours, Chen said finally. But I appreciate the honesty, Charlie. Alpha 2-1, out. The radio went silent. Maya stood in the logging road, the map shaking in her hands. Somewhere in the forest, 4 clicks away, a dozen American soldiers were making their last stand because they trusted technology that had betrayed them. And there was nothing she could do about it. Valkyrie, we need to keep moving. Price's voice was gentle. The LT's getting worse. She looked back at Webb. The lieutenant's face was gray, his breathing shallow. He might not have 12 hours either. Ochoa was staring at her, waiting for orders. Price had his hand on his aid bag, ready to move. 2 soldiers and a dying officer, trusting her to get them somewhere safe. She folded the map and tucked it away. Let's move, she said. They walked into the gathering darkness, leaving Alpha Team's voice fading in the static behind them. Night fell fast in the mountains. Maya had never experienced darkness like this. No streetlights, no buildings, no ambient glow from civilization. Just absolute blackness between the trees, broken only by occasional moonlight filtering through the canopy. She moved by compass and counting steps, her night vision useless without batteries she'd ditched to save weight. Every 100 meters, she'd stop and check her bearing, trying to match the terrain under her boots to the contour lines on Jack's map. It was terrifying. Behind her, Ochoa moved like a ghost, the big specialist somehow keeping quiet despite carrying the SAW. Price guided Webb, the medic's hand steady on the lieutenant's arm. They'd given Webb morphine from Price's aid bag, enough to dull the pain, but not enough to knock him out. They needed him mobile for at least a few more hours. Maya checked her watch. 2,134 hours. They'd been moving for 6 hours since the ravine. According to her dead reckoning, they'd covered maybe 10 kilometers. Not fast enough, but steady progress. The artillery fire base was still 12 clicks away, which meant they'd arrive around dawn if they kept this pace. If Webb lasted that long, if they didn't get lost in the dark, if the enemy didn't find them first. Her signal receiver chirped, a brief burst, close range, maybe 200 meters behind them. Maya's blood turned to ice. She raised her fist, halting the formation. Everyone froze. She listened, her senses straining in the darkness. There, the soft crunch of boots on snow. Voices speaking Russian in low tones. Someone laughed, the sound carrying clearly in the night air. They were being followed. Maya pulled the team off the logging road, guiding them into thick underbrush. They went to ground, weapons oriented back toward the road, barely breathing. Through the trees, Maya saw lights, 4 flashlights, sweeping methodically through the forest. The enemy was tracking them. "How?" Ochoa whispered, his lips barely moving. "We've been radio silent for hours." Maya's mind raced. They hadn't used radio except for Chen's transmission. They hadn't activated any electronic systems. The only device still on was her signal receiver, which was passive. It couldn't give away their position. Unless... She looked down at her wrist. Her tactical watch, the one synced to GPS. She'd powered down the GPS, but the watch still had a low-power beacon for friendly force tracking. A safety feature designed to help find lost soldiers. A feature the enemy had obviously learned to exploit. Maya stripped off the watch and threw it as hard as she could, sending it sailing into the forest 30 meters to their north. Then she pulled out her knife and pointed at the rest of the team, making slashing motions across her wrist. Ochoa understood immediately, yanking off his own watch. Price followed suit. The enemy patrol moved past their position, following the beacon signals north. Maya counted 8 soldiers, well-armed and equipped. They were speaking casually, confident they had the Americans located. She waited until they were 50 meters past, then touched Ochoa's shoulder and pointed south. They moved in the opposite direction, abandoning the logging road for the deep forest. It would be slower, harder to navigate, but at least they wouldn't be leaving an electronic trail. They walked for 30 minutes in absolute silence before Maya risked stopping to check her compass. She'd been counting steps, trying to maintain their southwest heading, but in the darkness it was almost impossible to be sure. "We need to rest," Price whispered. "The LT can't take much more." Maya nodded. They found a small depression between 2 fallen trees, thick with pine needles and sheltered from the wind. Price lowered Webb to the ground, while Maya and Ochoa established a hasty perimeter. "How'd they find us?" Ochoa asked quietly, once they were settled. "Tactical watches," Maya replied. "Friendly force beacons. We were broadcasting our position the whole time." "Jesus, what else are we carrying that's giving us away?" Maya thought about it. Radio, turned off except for brief transmissions. Signal receiver, passive only, couldn't transmit. Weapons, no electronics. The only other items with batteries were Price's medical gear and the SAW's night vision sight. "Strip everything with a battery," she ordered. "Pile it here. We'll bury it before we move out." They worked quickly, pulling batteries from every device. Night vision optics, tactical lights, even the laser designator on Ochoa's rifle. Everything went into a small pile beside the fallen tree. "We're going to be blind out here," Ochoa protested. "We're already blind," Maya countered. "At least this way we're invisible too." She dug a shallow hole with her knife and buried the electronics. Then she pulled out Jack's map and compass, the only navigation tools that couldn't betray them. "Get some rest," she told the others. 2-hour shifts. I'll take first watch." Ochoa and Price settled down, back to back for warmth. Webb was already unconscious, his breathing ragged. Maya checked the compass bearing one more time, memorizing the direction they needed to go, then settled against a tree with her rifle across her knees. The forest was full of sounds she'd never noticed before. Wind through branches, snow sliding off pine boughs, the distant crack of ice breaking on a stream. Without the electronic hum of radios and GPS units, the world felt bigger and more hostile. She thought about Alpha Team, still fighting somewhere in the darkness. About Bravo Team, probably dead by now. About Jack Reynolds bleeding out in a ravine to buy them time. All of them casualties of technology that had promised to make them invincible. Maya looked down at the paper map in her hands, its creases worn soft by Jack's use. On this chart, there were no false trails, no phantom cliffs, no invisible ambushes, just honest representation of terrain that had been walked and verified by human eyes. It was a relic, an anachronism, the kind of tool Captain Marsh had mocked that morning in his brief. And right now it was the only thing keeping them alive. Price shook her awake at 0200. Maya had barely slept, her body too tense, her mind racing with tactical problems. She stood, stretched stiff muscles, and checked on Webb. The lieutenant's pulse was weak but steady. Price had changed his bandages in the dark, working by touch alone. The medic's face was drawn with exhaustion. "He's got maybe 6 hours," Price whispered. "After that?" "We'll be at the fire base in 6 hours," Maya said, with more certainty than she felt. They moved out at 0230, navigating by moonlight and compass. Maya led, checking her bearing every 5 minutes, counting steps to estimate distance covered. It was slow, methodical work, the kind of navigation Jack had tried to teach her that she'd never bothered to master. She was mastering it now, by necessity. Around 400, they crossed a frozen stream. Maya checked the map, trying to identify which waterway it might be. There were 3 possibilities, all flowing roughly northwest. She knelt at the bank, studying the terrain. The stream was maybe 4 meters wide, ice thick enough to walk on. The banks were steep, about 2 meters, with pine trees growing right to the edge. To the south, she could see a ridgeline rising maybe 100 meters higher than their current position. She looked at the map. One of the streams, marked as Serpent Creek in Jack's notation, matched this description. If she was right, the artillery fire base was 8 clicks southwest, straight over that ridge. If she was wrong, they were lost. "Valkyrie, you sure about this?" Ochoa asked, reading the doubt on her face. "No," Maya admitted, "but this stream matches the terrain features, width, bank height, orientation. It's the best match I can find." "Best match isn't certainty." "Nothing's certain except the alternative." She pointed northeast, back the way they'd come. "We know the enemy is back there. We know the digital network is compromised. We know Alpha and Bravo are dying because they trusted technology that lied to them. This map is the only truth we have." She stood and shouldered her pack. "We cross here and climb the ridge. On the other side should be a valley running southwest. That leads to the fire base." "Should be," Ochoa repeated. "You're betting our lives on should be." "I'm betting our lives on Master Sergeant Reynolds' fieldcraft," Maya corrected. "He walked this terrain. He mapped it with his own eyes. That's worth more than any satellite data." They crossed the stream and started climbing. The ridge was steep, forcing them to use their hands in places. Webb groaned with each step, his morphine wearing off. Price stayed close, ready to catch him if he fell. Maya climbed ahead, her breath frosting in the pre-dawn cold. Her legs burned, her pack dragged at her shoulders, and doubt gnawed at her mind. What if she'd read the map wrong? What if this was the wrong stream? What if Jack's notations were outdated and the terrain had changed? She pushed the thoughts away and kept climbing. They crested the ridge at 0530, just as the first gray light touched the eastern sky. Maya dropped her pack and pulled out her spotting scope, the one piece of optics they'd kept because it had no electronics. Below them, a valley stretched southwest. At its far end, maybe 8 kilometers away, she could see artificial structures, buildings, vehicles, the geometric lines of human construction, the artillery fire base. "We made it," Ochoa breathed. "Holy shit, we actually made it." "We're not there yet," Maya cautioned, but relief flooded through her. Jack's map had been true. Every elevation line, every water source, every notation had been accurate. The old soldiers' knowledge had guided them through the darkness when every digital system had failed. They started down the ridge, moving faster now with the goal in sight. Maya allowed herself a moment of hope. They'd reach the firebase by noon. Webb would get medical care. They'd relay the GPS compromise through analog channels that couldn't be spoofed. They might actually survive this. That's when her signal receiver, the one piece of electronics she'd kept for early warning, screamed an alert. Multiple contacts, close range, very close range. Maya spun, bringing her rifle up. Through the trees ahead, she saw movement. Soldiers, at least a dozen, moving into position. They'd walk straight into an ambush. But how? They'd buried their beacons, abandoned all electronics, moved in absolute silence. How had the enemy known they'd be here? Then she understood. The enemy hadn't known. They just guessed. They'd put ambushes on every likely route to the firebase, covering all the approaches a competent soldier would use. And a competent soldier, navigating by map and terrain, would naturally choose the easiest path. The ridgeline offering observation, the valley providing concealment. Jack's knowledge had saved them in the dark, but it had also made them predictable in the light. "Contact front!" Maya screamed, diving for cover as the first rounds snapped past her head. "Defensive perimeter! Defensive perimeter!" Ochoa's saw roared, the heavy gun putting down suppressing fire. Price dragged Webb behind a fallen log. Maya selected targets and fired in short bursts, trying to make every round count. But they were outnumbered and in the open, with no good cover and no room to maneuver. The enemy had them exactly where they wanted them. The firefight lasted 4 minutes. It felt like 4 hours. Maya burned through 3 magazines, firing at muzzle flashes in moving shadows. Ochoa's saw hammered away until the barrel was smoking. Price tried to return fire while keeping Webb down, the medic's rifle barking in steady 2-round bursts. They were holding, barely, but holding wasn't winning. They needed to break contact, get out of the kill zone, find better ground. Maya's mind raced through options. They couldn't go forward. The enemy was dug in and waiting. They couldn't go back. More enemy closing from behind, drawn by the gunfire. Their only option was perpendicular movement, sliding along the ridge to find a gap in the ambush line. "Ochoa, shift fire left. Price, help me move the LT. We're displacing east." They moved in bounds, one firing while others moved. Maya half-carried Webb, the lieutenant's weight dragging at her. Her arms screamed. Her legs threatened to give out, but she kept moving. A round snapped past her head, close enough to feel. Another kicked up dirt at her feet. The enemy was tracking them, adjusting fire. They weren't going to make it. Then she saw it. A shallow depression, maybe 30 meters ahead, where a massive pine tree had fallen and torn up the earth. Not good cover, but better than nothing. She dragged Webb toward it, Price right behind her. 10 meters, 5 meters. Webb went limp in her arms. "Doc!" Maya screamed. They tumbled into the depression together, Maya rolling to cover the lieutenant with her body. Price was there instantly, his hands checking for wounds, for breathing, for any sign of life. "He's gone," Price said quietly. "Bled out internal. He was dead before he hit the ground." Maya stared at Webb's face, so young, probably not even 30. The lieutenant who'd trusted her navigation, who'd followed Jack's map because he had no better options, who'd made it 18 hours through enemy territory, only to die 50 meters from safety. "Valkyrie, we need to move." Ochoa's voice was ragged. "I'm almost black on ammo." Maya looked at the ridge behind them. The firebase was still 8 clicks away. They'd have to run that distance, under fire, with no support and almost no ammunition. The odds were worse than bad. They were impossible. But then the odds had been impossible since the moment the ground vanished under Jack Reynolds' boots. She grabbed Webb's dog tags. The lieutenant deserved to go home, even if his body couldn't, and keyed her radio for a final transmission. "Any station, this is Charlie Element. Lieutenant Webb is KIA. Sergeant Stone assuming command. If anyone can hear this, GPS network is compromised. Enemy has full spoofing capability. All digital nav data is unreliable. Authenticate coordinates through analog means only. I say again, static exploded in her ear. Her radio sparked and died, the screen going black. The enemy had hit them with an electromagnetic pulse, localized but powerful enough to fry every piece of electronics in their immediate area. Maya looked down at her dead radio, then at the paper map still folded in her pocket. They'd taken her last link to friendly forces, but they couldn't take Jack's knowledge. They couldn't jam a paper map or spoof a magnetic compass. The old skills, the museum-piece fieldcraft, was all she had left. It would have to be enough. On me, she told Price and Ochoa. We're moving to the firebase, and we're not stopping until we get there. That's 8 clicks through enemy territory with no comms, no support, and 30 rounds of ammo between us, Ochoa said. That's right. Maya pulled out Jack's map and compass, the tools that had guided them this far. But we've got something they don't. What's that? She showed them the map, its pencil lines marking safe routes and danger areas. Every notation verified by a soldier who'd walked this ground and survived. We've got the truth, and they're still operating on lies. Price managed a grim smile. Jack would be proud, Valkyrie. That's some old school thinking. Old school is the only school left, Maya replied. She checked her compass, shot an azimuth toward the firebase, and started moving. Behind them, the enemy regrouped for another assault. But Charlie team was already gone, slipping into the forest like ghosts, following a dead soldier's map toward the one place the enemy couldn't touch with their digital warfare. The last analog firebase in the theater. Their final sanctuary, if they could reach it alive. They moved through the forest like wounded animals, stumbling over roots and rocks, driven by pure survival instinct. Maya's legs were numb, her shoulders raw from the pack straps, her mind fogged with exhaustion. But she kept checking the compass, kept counting steps, kept matching terrain to the map in her hands. Price was struggling worse. The medic had given everything to keeping Webb alive, and now that the lieutenant was dead, something had broken inside him. He moved mechanically, his eyes 1,000-yard stare vacant. Ochoa was the only one still alert, the big specialist scanning for threats despite having maybe 10 rounds left in his saw. The machine gun was almost useless now, too heavy to justify its weight, too loud to fire without giving away their position. But he carried it anyway, because that's what machine gunners did. Around 0800, they stopped in a small clearing to catch their breath. Maya pulled out the map and tried to estimate their position. They'd covered maybe 3 clicks since the ambush. Good progress, but not good enough. The enemy would be tracking them, using their superior numbers to sweep the forest. We're not going to make it, Price said suddenly. You know that, right? Even if we reach the firebase, we're just 3 broken soldiers with a story no one will believe. They'll believe it when I show them Jack's map, Maya countered. When I explain how we navigated 18 hours through enemy territory without GPS. They'll think we got lucky, or that the enemy was incompetent. They won't believe their precious technology failed them. Price laughed bitterly. You think Captain Marsh is going to admit he was wrong? That his billion-dollar navigation system got soldiers killed? Maya had no answer for that. She knew Price was probably right. The Army had invested too much in digital systems to admit they were vulnerable. There would be investigations, reports, findings that blamed tactical errors or insufficient training. Anything but the technology itself. Doesn't matter, Ochoa said quietly. We still got a job to do. Alpha Team is still out there, dying because they trust the same broken system. Maybe we can't fix everything, but we can save them. How? Price demanded. We don't even know where they are. Chen said they were in some bowl-shaped depression with trees. That could be anywhere. Wait, Maya sat up straight, her mind suddenly racing. He said they were 4 clicks east of the original objective, and he mentioned limited visibility, trees, bowl-shaped terrain. She spread Jack's map on her knees, studying the area east of where Objective Falcon had been marked. There, a valley marked with Jack's notation, depression, poor viz, natural amphitheater. Grid coordinates 4721-3142. That's them, Maya breathed. That's where Alpha is pinned down. You can't know that for sure, Price protested. Jack mapped this entire area, every feature, every danger zone, every place where soldiers might get trapped. This notation matches Chen's description exactly. She looked up at the others. If we can get these coordinates to the firebase, they can relay them to command. Real coordinates, not the spoofed GPS data. Alpha might have a chance. Ochoa checked his watch. It's been 9 hours since Chen called. If they're still alive, they're alive, Maya said with certainty she didn't feel. Chen's a survivor. He'll hold until help comes. She memorized the coordinates, committing them to memory in case she lost the map. Then she checked her compass bearing one more time and stood. 5 more clicks. We can do this. They pushed on. The sun climbed higher, warming the air enough to turn snow into slush. Maya's boots were soaked, her feet numb with cold. Every step was agony, every breath burned in her lungs. But the firebase grew closer. Around 1,000 hours, Maya's dead radio suddenly crackled to life. She froze, pulling it from her belt. The screen was still black, but somehow it was receiving. To all units, emergency frequency, GPS network compromised. All units authenticate positions through. The transmission cut off. But Maya had heard enough. Someone at the firebase knew. Someone was spreading the word through analog channels. The message was getting out. They know, she told the others. The firebase knows about the GPS hack. How? Ochoa asked. Maya thought about it. Jack's final stand in the ravine. The way he'd bought them time, held the enemy while they escaped. Had he managed to get word out somehow? Or had another unit, somewhere else in the theater, discovered the same truth? It didn't matter. What mattered was that the warning was spreading, unit to unit, through radio nets the enemy couldn't easily penetrate. The old systems saving lives again. They moved faster now, energized by hope. The forest thinned ahead, giving way to cleared ground around the firebase perimeter. Maya could see guard towers, concrete barriers, the distinctive barrels of M777 howitzers pointed south. 200 meters. 100 meters. A challenge rang out. Halt! Identify yourselves. Charlie Team, Maya shouted, raising her empty hands. Sergeant Maya Stone, survivors from Firebase Resolute. We have critical intelligence on enemy electronic warfare. Soldiers emerged from fighting positions, weapons trained on them. A captain, artillery by his insignia, stepped forward. Your Charlie Team? We've been tracking your GPS signature for the past hour. You're supposed to be 6 clicks north of here. That GPS signature is fake, Maya said flatly. The enemy has spoofing capability. Our real position is exactly where you see us, authenticated by Dead Reckoning and Terrain Association. She pulled out Jack's map and spread it on the ground. Sir, we have coordinates for Alpha Team. They're pinned down and combat ineffective, but their GPS data is showing them in the wrong location. These are their real coordinates, verified against terrain features. The captain stared at the paper map like it was a holy relic. Then he nodded. Get them inside, and someone get battalion on the horn, the working horn, not the digital net. We've got a lot of people to save. Maya sat in the firebase command post, a blanket around her shoulders, hot coffee in her hands. The artillery captain, whose name was Drummond, was on an old field telephone, the kind with actual wires running to other positions. He was relaying coordinates to someone, reading numbers from Jack's map. Confirmed, fire mission, grid 4721-3142, shell type HE, proximity fuse. Danger close to friendly forces, but they've been advised. Commence firing. Through the window, Maya saw the howitzers adjust their aim. Then they fired, the sound of 6 guns launching simultaneously like thunder from God. The shells would fly for 2 minutes, arcing high over the mountains, before descending on coordinates that no digital system could verify. Coordinates marked in pencil on a paper map by a master sergeant the Army had considered obsolete. "Fire for effect," Drummond said into the phone. "Keep it coming. We're breaking up that ambush." Maya closed her eyes and saw Jack's face, weathered, knowing, patient. She heard his voice. "Trust your eyes, not the screen." "Sergeant Stone?" Drummond had hung up the phone and was looking at her. "Battalion wants a full debrief. How you navigated 18 hours without GPS. How you identified the spoofing. All of it. They're calling it the first confirmed case of coordinated electronic warfare against U.S. forces. This is going to change everything." "Will it save Alpha Team?" Maya asked. "We're hitting the enemy positions around them now. If they're still alive, they've got a chance." He paused. "That map you brought in, who made it?" "Master Sergeant Jack Reynolds. He didn't make it out of the first ambush." "Reynolds, the old-timer who always carried paper charts." "That's him." Drummond looked at the map spread on the table, its pencil notations marking paths that had saved lives. "I think maybe we owe that old-timer an apology. The whole Army does." Maya thought about Captain Marsh in the briefing room, mocking Jack for being obsolete, about the digital integration initiative that had made them all dependent on technology the enemy could compromise, about Alpha and Bravo teams dying because they trusted screens instead of their own eyes. "Sir, permission to speak freely?" "Granted. The Army doesn't need to apologize. It needs to learn. Every soldier should carry a paper map and compass. Every soldier should know terrain association, celestial navigation, all the skills we threw away because we thought technology made them obsolete." She met his eyes. "Jack Reynolds tried to teach us. We need to start listening." Drummond nodded slowly. "I'll make sure that goes in the after-action report, along with a recommendation that Master Sergeant Reynolds receive recognition for—" An explosion shook the command post. Maya was on her feet instantly, her hand reaching for a rifle that wasn't there. Through the window, she saw smoke rising from the southern perimeter. "Mortars!" someone screamed. "Incoming mortars!" The enemy had found them, and they were bringing the fight to the last analog sanctuary in the theater. The grinder wasn't done with Charlie Team yet. The second mortar round hit the motor pool, sending a Humvee 20 feet into the air. Maya dove behind a concrete barrier as shrapnel screamed overhead, pinging off metal and embedding in wood. "Counter battery fire!" Drummond was screaming into the field telephone. "Get those guns turned around. Southwest sector, approximate bearing 225. The M777 howitzers pivoted on their bases, crews working with practiced efficiency despite the incoming fire. Maya watched them calculate firing solutions using paper charts and mechanical plotting boards, analog systems that couldn't be hacked or spoofed. The old ways, the reliable ways. A third mortar round impacted near the command post, close enough to shower them with dirt. Maya grabbed her rifle. Someone had given her a loaded M4 when she'd entered the firebase, and moved toward the perimeter. If the enemy was hitting them with mortars, they were probably massing for a ground assault. "Valkyrie, what are you doing?" Price grabbed her arm. The medic looked hollowed out, his eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion. "What I'm trained for," Maya replied. She keyed the working radio clipped to her borrowed tactical vest. "Captain Drummond, request permission to set up signals intercept on the southern perimeter. If the enemy is coordinating an assault, I can give us early warning." "Granted. Take Specialist Ochoa with you." Maya found Ochoa near the ammunition bunker, the big specialist checking over a fresh M249 SAW. His old one had been abandoned during the final approach to the firebase. He looked up as she approached. "Let me guess, we're going toward the explosions. Best way to know what the enemy is planning." She showed him her signal receiver, one of the firebase's spares, still functioning because it had been stored in a Faraday cage. I need someone watching my back while I listen. They moved to the southern fighting positions, where artillery soldiers were manning M240 machine guns and preparing defensive positions. The perimeter was well constructed: concertina wire, pre-sighted firing lanes, interlocking fields of fire. But it was designed to defend against ground assault, not a combined arms attack with mortars and infantry. Maya set up her receiver and started scanning frequencies. The electromagnetic spectrum lit up with activity: multiple nets, coordinated timing, professional signals discipline. This wasn't militia. This was a well-trained force executing a deliberate attack. "Captain, I've got multiple enemy command nets active," she reported. "Estimate battalion-sized element, possibly larger. They're using frequency hopping and burst transmissions, but I can track the pattern." "Can you locate their command post?" Drummond asked. Maya adjusted her direction-finding antenna, triangulating on the strongest signals. "Southwest, approximately 3 clicks, near the old mining complex marked on the—" She stopped, realizing what she was about to say. "Marked on what, Sergeant?" "Marked on Master Sergeant Reynolds' map, sir. He noted it as a likely enemy staging area based on terrain and cover." There was a long pause on the radio. Then, "That map just keeps giving, doesn't it? All guns prepare fire mission. Grid reference from Reynolds' chart." Maya pulled out Jack's map. She'd kept it close, unable to let it go. Sure enough, there was the mining complex, marked with Jack's notation: "Covered approaches, good C2 site, command and control site." The old scout had identified it months ago as a place the enemy would naturally gravitate toward. The howitzers fired, 6 guns in rapid succession. Maya counted seconds, imagining the shells arcing through the morning sky. 30 seconds. 45 seconds. Then, in the distance, the sound of explosions. Through her signal receiver, she heard chaos, shouting in Russian, orders being countermanded, the electronic signature of a command post under direct fire. "Target hit," she reported. "Enemy command net is disrupted. Multiple secondary explosions, possibly ammunition storage." The incoming mortar fire slackened, then stopped entirely. Without their command post coordinating fires, the enemy battery was blind. "All stations, this is Firebase Dragon," Drummond's voice came through on the working radio net. "Enemy assault has been disrupted. Maintain defensive posture and prepare for possible follow-on attacks. And someone get Sergeant Stone a commendation. She just saved our asses." Maya slumped against the sandbags, adrenaline fading. Beside her, Ochoa was grinning. "We actually did it," the specialist said. "Fought our way here, saved Alpha Team, broke up an enemy assault, using nothing but a paper map and old-school fieldcraft." "Jack did it," Maya corrected quietly. "We just followed his lead." 2 hours later, a Black Hawk helicopter touched down inside the firebase perimeter. Maya watched as casualties were loaded aboard, artillery soldiers wounded in the mortar attack, along with Price, who was being sent back for psychological evaluation. The medic had earned it after 18 hours of holding the team together. "Valkyrie!" Drummond was jogging toward her, a radio handset in his hand. "Alpha Team is secure. Casualties evacuated. Survivors en route here. Lieutenant Chen wants to talk to you." Maya took the handset, her hands suddenly shaking. "Alpha 2-1, this is Charlie Element. Send it." Chen's voice came through, weak but alive. "Charlie, Alpha 2-1, Jesus, Valkyrie, we're alive. Your fire mission broke the ambush. They pulled back. We got medevac. We're flying out now. How the hell did you find us?" "Master Sergeant Reynolds' map, sir. He'd marked every tactical feature in the area. Once I had your description of the terrain, I could match it to his notations." "Reynolds, the old guy who always carried paper?" Chen's laugh was half sob. "I made fun of him once, called him a dinosaur. I owe him a beer. Hell, I owe him my life. He's gone, sir. KIA in the initial ambush. The radio was silent for a long moment. Then I owe him more than I can ever repay. Tell his family. Tell them he saved 12 lives today. Tell them the old ways still matter. I will, sir. Charlie Element out. Maya handed the radio back to Drummond and walked to the edge of the firebase, looking out over the valley they'd crossed in the dark. Somewhere out there, Jack Reynolds lay in a ravine that didn't exist on any digital map. A soldier who died defending knowledge the Army had tried to discard. But his knowledge had survived, in pencil marks on paper, in coordinates that couldn't be spoofed, in the skills he'd tried to teach anyone who would listen. Sergeant Stone? A young lieutenant approached, artillery, probably not even 25. Sir, Captain Drummond said you navigated 18 hours through enemy territory without GPS. I was wondering, could you teach us how you did it? Maya looked at him, at his clean uniform, his digital watch, his confidence in technology that had nearly gotten dozens of soldiers killed. She thought about Captain Marsh in his PowerPoint briefing, about Alpha and Bravo teams, trusting screens that lied to them, about Jack's patient attempts to pass on skills everyone thought were obsolete. Get a map and compass, she said, paper map, magnetic compass, and bring anyone else who wants to learn. Because this, she gestured at the firebase's old artillery pieces, its wireline communications, its mechanical plotting boards. This is the future now. The enemy proved that digital systems can be compromised. The only systems they can't touch are the ones that don't run on electricity. The lieutenant's eyes widened. You think the Army will actually go back to analog? I think the Army will realize it never should have left analog behind. Digital is a tool, not a crutch. The moment you can't function without your GPS, you're vulnerable to anyone who can take it away. She pulled out Jack's map, its creases worn soft. Master Sergeant Reynolds understood that. He tried to teach it. Now I'm going to make sure his lessons don't die with him. At 1400 hours, Captain Drummond called Maya to the command post. She arrived to find him studying a tactical display, one of the few digital systems still operating since it was air-gapped from the compromised GPS network. We've got a problem, Drummond said without preamble. The enemy knows we're here now. They're repositioning forces for another attack, probably tonight. Battalion wants us to hold this fire base. It's the only reliable fire support base in the region, now that digital targeting is unreliable. What do you need from me, sir? Your signal intercept capability and your creative thinking. He pointed at the display. The enemy is using sophisticated electronic warfare, right? Spoofing our GPS, probably monitoring our digital communications. But there's got to be a way to turn that against them. Maya thought about it. The enemy had penetrated U.S. networks deeply enough to inject false data. That level of access required sophisticated equipment and extensive preparation. But sophisticated systems had sophisticated vulnerabilities. Sir, if they're spoofing our GPS, they're broadcasting a signal stronger than the actual satellites. That means they've got a transmitter somewhere in theater, probably high ground, with line of sight to the operational area. Can you locate it? Maybe. If I can triangulate on the spoofing signal, she ran through the math in her head. I'd need mobile direction finding equipment and at least 3 measurement points to get an accurate fix. We've got DF gear, and we've got helicopters that can take you anywhere you need to go. Maya felt a cold thrill run through her. Sir, if we can locate that transmitter, we could do more than just shut it down. We could feed it false data, turn their own spoofing capability against them. Drummond's eyes lit up. Feed them bad coordinates, make them think our forces are somewhere they're not. Or better, make them think their own forces are somewhere they're not. Cause fratricide, confusion, break their command and control. Maya was thinking like Jack now, seeing the battlefield not as a digital abstraction, but as physical terrain where real decisions had real consequences. The spoofing transmitter is probably automated, following pre-programmed algorithms. If we can access it physically, we can reprogram it. That's a hell of a risk. You'd have to infiltrate enemy-controlled terrain, locate a heavily guarded transmitter, and somehow hack into it without getting killed. Sir, I've spent the last 18 hours doing things that should have gotten me killed. This is just one more. Drummond studied her for a long moment. You know, when you walked in here this morning, you looked like a kid who'd gotten lost on a camping trip. Now you look like Master Sergeant Reynolds. What changed? Maya thought about the question, about Webb dying in her arms, about Alpha Team's desperate radio call, about Jack's map, proving true time and again when every digital system had failed. I stopped trusting the screens, sir, started trusting my eyes. The Black Hawk dropped her 3 clicks east of the firebase at 1600 hours. Maya had insisted on going alone. Ochoa had argued, but she'd pulled rank. This mission required stealth and signals expertise, not firepower. She carried Jack's map, a compass, direction-finding equipment, and a laptop loaded with signal analysis software. Everything else was stripped down for speed. Light armor, minimal ammunition, no GPS or digital communications. She was hunting a ghost in the electromagnetic spectrum, and ghosts didn't show up on radar. Maya moved through the forest, stopping every 500 meters to take a bearing on the spoofing signal. Her DF equipment showed a strong transmitter approximately 4 clicks northeast, somewhere in the high terrain. She marked each bearing on Jack's map, watching the lines converge toward a peak marked Observation Point Hawk. Jack had been there. His notation read, 360-degree view, likely OP or relay site. Of course, the enemy would put their critical transmitter somewhere with maximum coverage in clear line of sight. Somewhere an old scout would have identified as tactically significant. Maya climbed. The terrain was brutal, steep slopes, loose rock, dense underbrush. But she'd learned something in the past day. Pain was temporary, quitting was permanent. She pushed through burning muscles and screaming lungs, counting steps and checking bearings, navigating the way Jack had taught her. By terrain, by compass, by the honest truth of what her eyes could see. She reached the peak at 1830 hours, just as the sun touched the horizon. Crawling the last 100 meters on her belly, she found what she was looking for. The transmitter site was a sophisticated setup, 3 large antenna arrays, a generator, and a control trailer, all camouflaged under netting. 4 guards patrolled the perimeter, professional soldiers with night vision and automatic weapons. Maya studied the layout through her rifle scope, mentally cataloging weaknesses. The guards were good but predictable, following set patrol routes. The generator was loud, which would mask small noises, and the control trailer had an external cable junction. If she could access that, she might be able to interface with the system without going inside. She waited for dark. At 2100 hours, during a guard shift change, Maya moved. She crawled through the perimeter, her movements glacially slow, remembering Jack's lessons about patience and observation. 20 meters, 15 meters, 10 meters. A guard walked past close enough for her to hear his radio crackle. She froze, barely breathing, her body pressed flat against cold stone. He kept walking. Maya reached the cable junction and pulled out her laptop. The system was Russian military hardware, encrypted and hardened. But encryption didn't matter if you had physical access to the transmission line. She spliced into the outgoing cable, creating a man-in-the-middle attack that let her intercept and modify the GPS spoofing data. For 10 minutes, she worked in absolute silence, her fingers flying over the keyboard. The system's architecture was complex, but the basic principle was simple. Broadcast false GPS coordinates that overrode legitimate satellite signals. She couldn't shut it down. That would alert the enemy immediately. But she could modify it, change the parameters, feed it new coordinates that would send enemy forces to the wrong locations, while U.S. forces, operating on analog navigation, would be unaffected. She uploaded her modified code and disconnected, carefully resealing the junction box. Then she backed away, moving with the same painful slowness. A guard shouted. Maya's heart stopped. Had they seen her? Heard her? No, two guards were arguing about something, their voices carrying in the night. She used the noise to cover her movement, sliding down the slope and into the tree line. She'd done it. The enemy's own spoofing system would now work against them, feeding false data to their units, while U.S. forces, guided by paper maps and human judgment, would be operating on truth. Jack would have been proud. Maya made it back to the firebase at 0200 hours, exhausted but triumphant. Drummond was waiting for her in the command post, along with a colonel she didn't recognize. Battalion commander probably, based on the eagles on his collar. "Report, Sergeant," the colonel ordered. "Sir, enemy GPS spoofing transmitter is located and compromised. I've modified their broadcast data to feed false coordinates to any unit using digital navigation. Our forces operating on analog systems will be unaffected." The colonel stared at her. "You infiltrated an enemy transmitter site, alone, and reprogrammed their electronic warfare system?" "Yes, sir. The modification is subtle. They won't detect it unless they physically inspect the code. By the time they realize what's happened, we'll have tactical advantage." "Show me." Maya spread Jack's map on the table and pointed to Observation Point Hawk. "The transmitter is here, exactly where Master Sergeant Reynolds predicted an enemy relay site would be. I used his terrain analysis to plan my approach, his notation of blind spots to avoid detection, and his marked patrol routes to time my infiltration." The colonel picked up the map, studying Jack's pencil marks. "This is extraordinary fieldcraft. Where did you get this?" "Master Sergeant Jack Reynolds, sir. He made it over 3 months of patrols, mapping every tactical feature in the operational area. He died defending this knowledge 20 hours ago." Maya's voice was steady despite the emotion beneath. "He tried to teach us that digital systems could fail. We should have listened." "I'm listening now, Sergeant." The colonel set down the map carefully. "Captain Drummond tells me you navigated 18 hours through enemy territory without GPS, located Alpha Team using terrain association, and directed artillery fire using coordinates from a paper chart. That's the kind of skill set we thought we didn't need anymore. Sir, with respect, it's the only skill set that matters when the technology fails. And technology always fails eventually." The colonel nodded slowly. "Point taken. All right, here's what's going to happen. At 0600, we're launching a counteroffensive. Every unit in the battalion moving on enemy positions. They'll be operating on compromised GPS data, thinking they're going to the right locations, but actually going to the wrong ones. We'll be using analog navigation, guided by terrain and maps. It'll be chaos for them, but clarity for us. Sir, request permission to participate in the assault." "Denied. You've done enough, Sergeant. You're going back to Firebase Resolute for a proper debrief. And you're bringing that map with you. Command needs to see what real fieldcraft looks like." Maya wanted to argue, but exhaustion was finally catching up with her. She nodded, accepting the order. "One more thing," the colonel added. "Master Sergeant Reynolds is being recommended for the Silver Star, posthumously, and you're being recommended for the Bronze Star with V device. What you've accomplished in the past 24 hours is going to change how this army operates. Digital integration isn't going away, but we're going to remember that it's a tool, not a replacement for soldier skills." Maya stood in Captain Marsh's office at Firebase Resolute. The intelligence officer looked older than he had 3 days ago, the kind of aging that comes from realizing you were catastrophically wrong. "Sergeant Stone," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology, and I owe one to Master Sergeant Reynolds, though I'll never get the chance to deliver it." "Sir, let me finish." Marsh gestured at his desk, where Jack's map lay spread out. "This map, and the skills that created it, saved more lives in 24 hours than my digital integration initiative saved in 3 months. I thought I was modernizing the battalion. Instead, I was making us vulnerable to exactly the kind of attack we experienced. Maya said nothing. There was nothing to say. The after-action report is going to bury me, Marsh continued. Career over, probably. But that's appropriate. I ignored the warnings of an experienced NCO because I was arrogant enough to think technology could replace expertise. Lieutenant Webb is dead because of decisions I made. Alpha and Bravo teams lost 30% casualties because of systems I mandated. That's on me. He picked up Jack's map, handling it with something like reverence. This is being sent to command for analysis. They want to understand how one soldier, working alone with paper and pencil, created a more reliable intelligence product than our entire digital architecture. The preliminary answer is embarrassing. He walked the ground, observed with his own eyes, and recorded what he saw. No algorithms, no sensors, no satellite feeds, just honest fieldcraft. That's what Jack tried to tell people, sir. I know, and I'm making sure his lessons don't die with him. Marsh opened a folder and pulled out a document. Effective immediately, every soldier in this battalion will receive training in analog navigation, terrain association, and map reading. We're issuing paper maps and compasses as primary equipment with GPS as backup. And we're establishing a Master Sergeant Jack Reynolds Award for excellence in fieldcraft, to be given annually to the NCO who best demonstrates old-school soldier skills. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. He'd like that, sir. I hope so, because he was right about everything, and I was wrong about everything, and the only reason any of us are still alive is that he prepared you for the moment when technology failed. Marsh extended his hand. Thank you, Sergeant Stone, for carrying his knowledge forward, for trusting the map when every instinct said to trust the screen. Maya shook his hand, then picked up Jack's map. The paper was worn thin now, the creases nearly transparent. But the pencil marks were still clear. Elevation lines, water sources, danger areas, all the knowledge of a soldier who'd understood that truth couldn't be digitized. Sir, request permission to keep this map. Granted, it's yours now. You're the custodian of Reynolds' legacy. Maya stood at the front of a classroom at Fort Benning, facing 30 young soldiers fresh out of basic training. On the wall behind her was a large photograph of Master Sergeant Jack Reynolds, taken during a patrol 3 months before his death. He was smiling, a paper map visible in his cargo pocket. This is Master Sergeant Reynolds, Maya told the class. He spent 30 years mastering skills most people thought were obsolete. Map reading, terrain association, celestial navigation, all the techniques we abandoned when GPS became standard. And 6 months ago, those obsolete skills saved my life and the lives of dozens of other soldiers. She pulled out Jack's original map, now laminated and preserved, and held it up. This map represents something important, not just cartography, but philosophy. The idea that technology is a tool, not a crutch, that human skills, human judgment, and human observation are irreplaceable. A hand went up in the back row. Sergeant, are we really going back to paper maps? I thought GPS was supposed to be unhackable. GPS is hackable, as are radios, drones, digital communications, and every other electronic system we depend on. The enemy proved that. What they can't hack is a soldier who knows how to read terrain, who can navigate by stars, who can function when every battery dies and every screen goes black. Maya walked to the window and pointed at the training area beyond. Out there, you're going to learn the old ways, not because digital is bad, but because digital alone is insufficient. You need to be able to fight and navigate and communicate when technology fails, because it will fail. It always does. She turned back to the class. Master Sergeant Reynolds died teaching this lesson. Don't let his death be meaningless. Learn the skills, practice them, pass them on, because the next time our technology is compromised, You might be the one carrying the map that everyone else depends on. The classroom was silent. 30 young faces stared at her with something like understanding. Maya opened Jack's map one more time, showing them the pencil marks that had saved so many lives. This is what real fieldcraft looks like. Not a screen, not an app, not an algorithm, just a soldier, a map, and the honest truth of what the eyes can see. She closed the map carefully and set it on the desk. Now let's go outside and learn how to make your own. The memorial ceremony at Firebase Resolute was simple. A plaque mounted on the command post wall, brass polished bright, engraved with Jack Reynolds' name and rank. Below it, his citation: Master Sergeant Jack Reynolds, Silver Star, posthumous, for gallantry in action against an armed enemy. MSG Reynolds' tactical expertise, dedication to soldiercraft, and ultimate sacrifice enabled the survival of his team and the preservation of critical intelligence that prevented catastrophic friendly casualties. His insistence on maintaining analog navigation skills in a digital age proved decisive in combat operations. MSG Reynolds exemplified the highest traditions of military service. Maya stood before the plaque, now wearing Sergeant First Class stripes. Captain Drummond, promoted from his artillery firebase, stood beside her. Behind them, a formation of soldiers from the battalion, all carrying paper maps and compasses on their gear. He changed everything, Drummond said quietly. Doctrine, training, equipment priorities. There are soldiers alive today because he refused to let the old skills die. He tried to teach us, Maya replied. We just weren't ready to learn. Not until the technology failed and we had nothing else. Are you ready? Drummond asked. Maya pulled a paper map from her pocket, new, unmarked, waiting to be filled with her own knowledge. She'd walked dozens of patrols in the past 6 months, adding her own pencil notations to charts that would outlast any digital device. I'm ready. Let's go map some terrain. They walked out together into the afternoon sun, toward the mountains where Jack Reynolds had died defending knowledge that would never become obsolete again. Above them, satellites circled, broadcasting signals that soldiers no longer fully trusted. But on the ground, where soldiers lived and fought and sometimes died, paper maps and compasses and human skill had reclaimed their rightful place. The old ways, the true ways, the ways that Jack Reynolds had fought to preserve. His legacy, carried forward by the soldiers he trained, would endure long after the last satellite fell silent. Because some knowledge couldn't be hacked or spoofed or compromised. Some knowledge was written in pencil on paper, verified by human eyes, tested by survival, and that knowledge would never die.